Someone you love is going to die. Maybe they already have, and when it happens, there will be a moment, maybe at the funeral, maybe alone in a quiet room, where you do something your ancestors would completely recognize. Not your great-grandparents, not ancient Romans. Humans who lived 100,000 years ago, in caves, with stone tools and no language as we understand it. They did the same thing you will do. And scientists are only beginning to understand what that means. For most of human history, we assumed death rituals were a product of civilization. Something that came with religion, with language, with settled societies that had the luxury of ceremony. We were wrong. The evidence coming out of caves and excavation sites around the world is pushing the origin of human grief further and further back into deep time. Back past the first cities, past the first farms, past the first cave paintings. Back to a moment so early that the humans involved were not quite us, and yet they were doing something unmistakably human. Let's start with the oldest evidence we have. In the mountains of central Spain, there is a cave system called Atapuerca. Deep inside it, at the bottom of a 43-foot vertical shaft, archaeologists found something that stopped them cold. The bones of at least 28 individuals. Homo heidelbergensis, an archaic human species that predates our own by hundreds of thousands of years. The shaft is called Sima de los Huesos, the pit of bones. Here's what made it extraordinary. There was almost nothing else down there. No evidence of habitation, no animal bones from meals, no tools scattered around. Just bodies, dropped deliberately into a pit in the dark 430,000 years ago. Someone carried these people to the edge of that shaft and put them in. Researchers found a single hand axe among the remains, a beautifully crafted pink quartzite tool with no practical function at the site. They named it Excalibur. It may be the oldest known grave offering in human history. Nobody knows exactly what these people believed. Nobody knows if they had words for death, or souls, or the afterlife, but they knew the difference between a body and a person. And when the person was gone, they did not leave the body where it fell. That instinct, that need to do something, is 430,000 years old, but it gets older. In 2023, a team led by paleoanthropologist Lee Berger announced a discovery that rewrote the timeline entirely. Deep inside a cave system in South Africa called Rising Star, they found burial sites belonging to Homo Naledi, a small-brained hominin with a brain roughly 1/3 the size of yours. By every traditional measure, Homo Naledi should not have been capable of ritual thought. Scientists had assumed that the cognitive capacity for death ritual required a large, complex brain. Homo Naledi proved that assumption wrong. The burials were deliberate. The bodies were placed in specific positions. Some of the cave walls around the burial sites were engraved with geometric markings. A species with a brain the size of an orange was apparently grappling with what to do when someone stopped breathing. The discovery is still contested, still being analyzed. But if it holds, it means death ritual is not a product of intelligence as we measure it. It is something deeper, something older than our species entirely. Now come forward in time to about 60,000 years ago in a cave in the Zagros Mountains of northern Iraq called Shanidar Cave. Inside it, archaeologists found the remains of several Neanderthals. But one burial stopped researchers entirely. The skeleton of an adult male, later called Shanidar 4, was surrounded by dense concentrations of pollen from at least 8 different flowering plant species. When this was first analyzed in the 1960s, the conclusion seemed obvious. The Neanderthals had laid flowers on the body. They had decorated the grave of someone they loved. It became one of the most famous finds in the history of archaeology. The flower burial, proof that Neanderthals grieved. The story is more complicated now. Later researchers suggested the pollen may have been introduced by burrowing rodents, not placed by human hands. The debate has never fully closed, but here is what is not debated. Neanderthals did bury their dead. At sites across Europe and the Middle East, Neanderthal skeletons have been found in deliberate positions, limbs arranged, bodies oriented consistently, sometimes with tools or animal bones placed nearby. Whether or not there were flowers at Shanidar, something was happening, something that looks from this distance a lot like a funeral. And then there is the child. At Border Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found the remains of an infant buried approximately 74,000 years ago. The body had been placed in a pit. A perforated conus shell was found with the remains, the same type of shell used as personal ornament by humans of that period. Someone buried a child and placed a piece of jewelry with them, a shell that may have belonged to the child. or to the parent. Something small and meaningful, something that mattered, left in the dark with someone too young to have ever used it. There is no scientific instrument that can measure what the parent felt. But there is no other explanation for the shell. Not every group of ancient humans responded to death the same way. This is where it gets complicated. Some groups practiced what archaeologists call excarnation, the deliberate removal of flesh from bone, not for consumption, but as a ritual process. The body would be left exposed on a platform or on high ground, open to the sky and to birds, until only the bones remained. Then the bones would be collected and treated, sometimes painted with red ochre, sometimes buried, sometimes kept. Sky burials, as they are still called in parts of Tibet and among some indigenous groups today, are not a lesser form of death ritual. They are a different philosophy. The body returns to the sky, to the air, to the birds. It becomes part of something larger. Some groups did both. They would leave a body to be cleaned by the elements, then return for the bones, which they treated as sacred objects. Ancestors who could be carried, ancestors who stayed with the living. And some groups, as we have already seen in other contexts, consumed the dead. Not always from starvation. Sometimes as a form of incorporation, of taking the person inside the group permanently, of keeping them alive in a literal sense. This practice appears across multiple cultures, multiple continents, across deep time. It was never universal, but it was never rare either. What all of these practices share is the same underlying recognition. Something has changed. This person was here, and now they are not, and that change requires a response. It cannot simply be ignored. Here is where archaeology becomes something almost unbearable to read. At multiple burial sites from 100,000 years ago onward, archaeologists have found skeletons dusted with red ochre, a naturally occurring iron oxide pigment ground into powder and applied to the body before burial. Red, the color of blood, the color of life, spread over someone who no longer had either. At Skull Cave in Israel, 100,000-year-old burials contained grave goods, tools, animal jaws, ornaments. At Kafse Cave, also in Israel, a child was buried with the antlers of a fallow deer placed across the body. At Lake Mungo in Australia, the oldest known cremation in human history dates to approximately 40,000 years ago. The bones were burned, then ground, then gathered, then buried. Someone put that much effort into what happened after the fire went out. Every one of these acts required time, planning, return. Someone had to come back to a place associated with death and do more work there. That is not instinct. That is grief being processed into action. And here's the modern mirror. Every funeral tradition you know is a version of something your ancestors invented in a cave. The flowers at a graveside are Shanidar. The jewelry placed in a coffin is border cave. The wake, the gathering of people who love the same person, is the fire at Atapuerca, the group that came together when one of them was gone. The impulse to mark the spot, to put something there, to return, to not simply walk away, is 430,000 years old at minimum. You did not learn grief. You were born with it. It was built into the species long before language gave it words. There is one more thing. Researchers studying early burial sites have noticed something that does not get discussed enough. The graves are almost never isolated. They cluster. People were buried near people. Group after group, across thousands of years, returned to the same locations to place their dead. Not because anyone told them to, because the place had become meaningful, because the dead were still somehow there. This is the origin of every cemetery, every mausoleum, every sacred ground on earth. The instinct to gather the dead together, to keep them near, to visit. It is not religion, not yet. It predates religion by tens of thousands of years. It is something more fundamental. The refusal to let a person become nothing. Somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000 years ago, a human being died, and the people around them did not walk away. We do not know their names. We do not know what they felt. We do not know if they had words for any of it. But they came back. They always came back. And so do you.